I appreciate y'all joining me for the next chapter in Chapters in Character. Um, this chapter centers around self identity and self reliance. I want to start with self identity. Um, I don't know. It was a few years ago, and I know on my mom's side, my cousin Frenchie has done it for our family as well. But my dad did kind of a deep dive into my great great grandmother, his great grandmother, who raised him, uh, went into our history. So this is on his mother's side, my grandmother's grandmother, and you've heard me talk about my Grammy and granddaddy before, and how lucky I was to have been alive when they were into their 90s and know them well, and was able to get to know them because, I mean, that goes back to 1911 and I believe 14. They were married 77 years just alone. So we were able, when it comes down to self identity, the reason why I'm going over this from a lineage and familial perspective is because I think oftentimes we lose sight of the fact that our recorded history or recallable history is not uh, is not easy to piece together, and that's obviously because of slavery and other things uh, that prevented kind of the continuity of families for generations. And so I got excited when my dad was able to, we're roughly able to go back to was it 1854, I believe, 1854 or 1839. I'm sorry. Uh, and that goes back to, I believe, Sally, South Carolina, and having to use old marriage certificates and Bible pages to even piece together and go back to the 1800s. I mean, the level of excitement when you even, you know, are getting close to um, bridging the gap and going back as far as you can. And it makes sense because I believe Sally, South Carolina is near Georgia, where we were able to trace back a little before recently, but being able to kind of piece that together. We believe Rena Brown, um, born in 1839, and these were recorded in a family Bible. I believe that was passed down. But we knew Passion, uh, Grisham. We know when she was born, when she passed in 1941. Um, and Rena Brown was, uh, we believe, Passion's mother. Um, and Passion was the mother of Dilsey Grissom, which was uh, my great 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 grandmother. So when you put all that together and really can at least trace back a piece of your family all the way to 1839, man, you think you have an identity until you realize and feel that feeling when you can reach back that far, uh, and be very confident that you've at least tied yourself back to South Carolina. And so for me, I want to transition into self reliance because the essay Self Reliance was the beginning of me establishing my identity. I bring up the family and being able to trace back and how important lineage is and how important keeping the continuity of a family at least in recorded. And then again, for me, both my mother's mother, my grandma's sister. Yes, we called her. Everybody in the community called her sister, but she was my grandma. Lived to be into her 80s, and then also to have my great grandparents both live into their 90s. I can't ask for much more in being able to really get to know people who were around during the real tough times and that they were tied back to people who were born in 1854 and knew them well. So you're one step removed uh, from people who knew our family in the 1800s. It's wild. And so when you can put yourself in that position later in life, you understand things. But early on for me, and I spoke about this in the first two episodes of this podcast, 15, 16-year-old was huge for me, turning point. I've talked about before that 8 to 10 range when my parents split and when and all those few years after, and how important that was in my life. But I started trying to figure things out versus letting life happen to me around the age of 15, 16 years old. And in particular, we had a fantastic English department at Monticello, from Miss Abbott to Miss Ripley to Miss Facuri, who I had. And then you had Jill Brown and Miss Reginelli and others as well, but I never were in their class. But I could not have asked for better English teachers. And whether that be reading John Donne in Miss Ripley's class, and to Shakespeare in Miss Abbott's class, but the one was Miss Facuri in our chapters on transcendentalism and being introduced to Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson, and the essay Self-Reliance, I believe, is one of the single greatest American works, if not works, of all time. And I'm wide-eyed. I'm trying to find my own path and carve it out, because this is the height of my brother's power. And so I was just trying to figure it out and define myself. I was kind of already had an independent spirit at that point, but I didn't feel like I was moving anywhere with purpose, and I was almost unassuming and compared to what I later became to be. And it wasn't just because of natural maturity. It was just because I wasn't as resolute and assertive. I'll put it that way. And Self-Reliance is one of those essays that really unlocks, if you're particularly if you're a thinker, unlocked in me some of that self-confidence that I just needed. And there's quite a few that stand out to me. But I picked out three. And there's more famous ones, and I'll probably mention them when I sit down with Rakeem. But the first one is from the essay Self-Reliance. I appeal from your customs. I must be myself. I cannot break myself any longer for you, or you, or you. If you can love me for what I am, we shall be happier. If you cannot, I will still seek to deserve that you should. I must be myself. I will not hide my tastes and aversions. I will so trust that what is deep is holy, and that I will do strongly before the sun and the moon whatever inly rejoices me and the heart appoints. If you are noble, I will love you. If you are not, I will not hurt you, and myself by hypocritical intentions. It was like words on a page that was like, it was an expression of everything my life was intending. It's like, I'm just me, man. Like, I can't bend over backwards to try and seek your adoration and acceptance anymore. Like, I'm just me. I'm not trying to make you somebody else. I just don't want you to try to make me someone else. And if it stirs me inwardly, I'm gonna strongly and be passionate about it. Be strongly passionate about it. Um, and so I was like, okay, this is just what I was like. Whoa, you're in that formative age, and you're just trying to figure it out. And someone from God knows how long ago. I mean, I had heard about Emerson, but I never read Emerson. I never read him, and he had me. And he unlocked something in me. A lot like I talked about the miseducation of Lauryn Hill in the last chapter. Something was speaking to me in that. I must be myself. I cannot break myself any longer for you or you. If you can love me for what I am, we shall be happier. If you cannot, I will still seek to deserve that you should. That was just, it was a way of saying, I'm not, even the good parts of me, I'm not being good for you. I'm being good because that's what I think is right. Whoa. Talking about setting the record straight without, like, wow. I was hooked. One of the next ones, one of my favorite. I didn't want to choose the famous ones, but this one's rather long. But he says, these are the voices which we hear in solitude. Talking about the conscience, what's stirring you, the things that matter to you, the voice inside your head when you're reflecting. These are the voices which we hear in solitude, but they grow faint and inaudible as we enter into the world. Society everywhere is in conspiracy against the manhood of every one of its members. Society is a joint stock company in which the members agree, for the better securing of his bread to each shareholder, to surrender the liberty and culture of the eater. The virtue in most request is conformity. The virtue in most requests is conformity. Self-reliance is its aversion. It loves not realities and creators, but names and customs. Whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist. He who would gather immortal palms must not be hindered by the name of goodness, but must explore if it be goodness. Nothing is at last sacred but the integrity of your own mind. The virtue in most request is conformity. Society everywhere is in conspiracy against the manhood of every one of its members. The lesson in the first half of that, at least, is the pressures to conform are natural and abundant and always around you. Always around you. Be ready. Be ready. Like, be prepared. Why are you surprised that people are not people, but just the aggregate of society is trying to, or not even necessarily trying, is pressuring you to conform to the rest of society? It's just natural. It's not even necessarily intentional. And so, can you be aware of that and be resolute in who you are and what you do? And can you ever really be prepared for that battle if you don't believe in yourself? If you don't even know who you are? If the majority of your life has been driven by other people telling you what you should do, how can you ever be who you are if you've only always thought about what other people want you to be? Mm. The next one, and truly it demands something godlike in him who has cast off the common motives of humanity and has ventured to trust himself. High be his heart, faithful his will, clear his sight, that he may in good earnest be doctrine, society, law to himself. That a simple purpose may be to him as strong as iron is to others. Purpose. 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 To have something godlike in you, and I mean lowercase g, godlike, greatness, you have to cast off the common motives of humanity, the base instincts, the normal motivations. That's how society shapes you. When you just are doing stuff because that's what most people do, right? That's why most people do it. Common motives of humanity. And will you venture off to trust yourself? To set the task at hand or the task before you out and believe in yourself to complete it? And almost prayer like, high be his heart, faithful his will, clear his sight, that he may in good earnest be doctrine, society, law to himself. Use. Eventually we'll get to a chapter about self-governance. But you got to rely on self first. You got to identify who self is first before you can govern it, before you can keep it in check, before you can check yourself. Insist on yourself, never imitate. These were the lessons of self-reliance. And transcendentalism is just, it's great. Like, there are probably quotes that you didn't even know come from it. A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds, adored by little statesmen and philosophers and divines. Is it so bad to be misunderstood? Pythagoras was misunderstood. Socrates, Jesus, Luther, Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, and every pure and wise spirit that ever took flesh. To be great is to be misunderstood. And one of the more famous, the one that really made me zero in on this piece, this essay, was there is a time in every man's education when he arrives at the conviction that envy is ignorance, that imitation is suicide, that he must take himself for better, for worse as his portion, that though the wide universe is full of good, no kernel of nourishing corn can come to him but through his toil, bestowed on that plot of ground which is given to him to till. The power which resides in him is new in nature, and none but he knows what that is which he can do, nor does he know until he has tried. From that point forward, it was Katie bar the door for me. And I'm not even doing how effective Julie Facuri was in executing these lessons and this set of lessons. It was a game changer for me. It was one of the most important periods in a classroom that I've ever had. And it's because of what it unlocked. And for instance, it wasn't just self-reliance. That helped set the stage of this chapter. But it was also Thoreau, Walden. It's called Walden. And one thing that stood out to me was I learned this, at least by my experiment. This is Thoreau talking, that if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. Be confident. Know what you want. Do what it takes to get it. Live the life that you imagine. And success will come to you in a way that won't be met in common hours, because you're going to be so driven, so motivated that you're not just going to do the minimum. You got to find out what you love. It was just an inspiration to think. If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now put the foundations under them. It's like a call to action. Dream, but plan, then execute. But dream first. Believe first. It matters. So I bring it back to where we began. For me to have an identity tethered to my mother and my father and the histories of our family, you got to define yourself. You got to see where you fit. And the beautiful part about that is, when you know yourself, you can see where you got pieces of your family in you. There's a lot of my dad I have. There's some that I don't. There's some that I don't. Same with my mom. I got a lot of qualities like my mom, far more than most people probably realize. My dad has pieces of his mother He's got a piece of his uncle too. And we laugh about it. He probably denied. But when you get to know yourself and you get to know not just yourself, but even your family, and you build a confidence, that's when you can unlock so much. But I wanted to define myself once I unlocked that confidence, once I was free to dream, once I was reading these works from long and long ago. And the message that comes from these works can come to you in other books. I'm getting chills and also disappointed in how long it's been since I've just read for leisure, other than long form articles or things that are selfish in nature, because I want to know something deeper. Or I'm interested, or I'm trying to be educated on something. When's the last time you read something that was recommended to you by someone that knows you well? What was unlocked in me was unlocked because I had the right teacher at the right time with the right books speaking to me at the right moment. And the only way I can describe that is close to divine, because it was rocket fuel behind even who I am and how I approach life now. Like, no, I was given a set of talents, and I was given this plot of land, and I need to sow the seeds and put the work in. But what others can tell me what they think, but they don't walk my steps for me. And that independent mind is different than a mind that's rooted in the self-reliance, that was outlined in the essay and embodied in Transcendentalism. Because independence connotes this, I only need myself. And yes, Emerson and definitely Thoreau talked about solitude all the time, but not complete solitude. We are so far as a society away from true isolation. We may feel isolated and things like that, but they're talking about, back then, they were talking about going out in the woods. Walden was written and about solitude. For me, self-reliance is driven by a confidence in self amidst the crowd. That's what makes it such a groundbreaking work, at least in my life, because it wasn't about saying you should be alone. It was first telling you that it behooves you to be comfortable when you're alone, to be able to use that time to center yourself, to push yourself to define what you really want, that you're really committed to, but to also carry that amongst you, in you, when you're amongst the crowd, because you can't avoid it. And the pressures of changing are going to be there. So be prepared. But the stronger you feel about who you are and yourself, and the confidence you have in yourself, the easier that it'll be to live amongst the crowd and not feel like you're contorting, conforming, and have no true self-identity. So dedicate this to all of the history of my family. And again, that's just on one side, whether that be Passion, whether that be Rena, uh, Lula, the 1800s. It's wild. I'm looking at my dad's handwritten notes and the old marriage certificates, tracing back to Lone Oak, Arkansas. Written, some of it written in pencil, some of it written on a Bible, handed down. Unbelievable. Be in touch with your family, discover yourself, create confidence, not false confidence, confidence because you found something that you're committed to. Your constitution morally and internally is being written. Self-identity and self-reliance and the capacity for that and the understanding of who you are and the confidence in who you are, some of the most important character traits and journeys in this life. And I hope I was able to express to you how important it is to me. There's more to come, and I'll see you soon.